Okay. Do a product review. A product review and then a story. Product review because I'm sitting here. This is a Keystone Stoker stove, and it burns coal because we're all about that fight for global warming. Except that I guess I'm on the wrong side. But it's kind of a neat unit. It blows hot air. It's really a forced air furnace. It blows air out. The blower motors, can't really see them, but they're on that side. And there's a coal hopper on that side, and it automatically feeds, and air blows through it, and it burns, and it just kind of comes out that chute onto that plate. Air blows through it, it burns, it makes a lot of heat. So that's a new addition. I just got that up and running the other day. And the funny story, watching or listening to Poison Stinger's channel tonight. He was doing a chat called the Green Dragon Inn, and somewhere along the line got into, you know, underage drinking type stuff. And so I said it was a funny story. My brother tried getting served, and it was a shit show, with cops and mayhem. But the story's too long, so I'll do a video on it. There's no way I was going to type a book. So anyway, this is to everybody that was on the chat for the Green Dragon with Poison Stinger. He was about 18, 19 years old. I was out of high school, and I had a work truck that I worked out of. It was an F-250, and I had a little four-wheel drive Ford Ranger that I just had. It was a car. It was a little four-wheel drive. It had a sunroof, short bed, bucket seats. It was a sporty little thing. And my buddy had a Toyota, and I had a lot of friends that had four-wheel drive trucks back then. So anyway, myself, my girlfriend, my friend Dave, and his girlfriend, we had this spot. You cut through the woods, and you'd end up above the interstate. And it was a little spot, and have a campfire, build a little fire, and hang out with, a couple six packs, and just kind of chill out. So anyway, that's the plan. So somebody bought the land you had to cut through to get to this spot, and then they didn't really care for us driving through it. They built a big house. The house is still there. It's like, I don't know, 6,000-7,000 square feet. It's this big mansion. So they put, rocks across it. We were in four-wheel drive trucks, so we drive over the rocks. Then he put chains across it, so we drove around the chains. And then I guess in desperation, you got somebody with a backhoe to dig like tank traps. And if you got going fast, you could jump over the holes. So we're doing that one night. And it's like, I don't know, late October, early November. It's kind of chilly, but it's not terrible out that night. And leave the house, pick up my girlfriend, hook up with Dave and his girlfriend, and we got some beers, and we're heading out there. And it's all muddy. It's really a mess. Dave gets caught in a rut. He almost slams into me. I hit the brakes. Next thing you know, I'm stuck as hell in one of these holes. And we're trying to pull this truck out, and it's not happening. So the four of us get in this little Toyota truck, and we drive up to it was originally a little one-room schoolhouse, and now it's like a community center library right in the middle of one of the towns. So we pull in there. We're all covered with mud, sweating bullets, waiting for this guy to realize my truck's in his backyard, stuck in one of his tank traps. And there's a payphone there. This is back in the 80s, before anybody had cell phones. So we start going through calling people that had bigger four-wheel drive trucks to get this thing out of there. And a buddy of mine He had a four-wheel drive Chevy on like, I don't know, 44-inch mutters. I mean, this thing would go anywhere. And he happened to be home, and he said, "Yeah, I'll be right up." But he lived, I don't know, 15 miles away. So we're waiting there, and the police show up. And they're looking at the four of us. We're all covered with mud. Truck's all covered with mud. And he's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And we're like, "Oh, we're waiting for a friend." And I'm waiting for, and it was a small town. Everybody knew each other. The cop knew who I was. There was no reason for her to ask, "Who are you? What are you doing?" And I'm like, shit. The guy came home and he called the fucking police. So I'm playing stupid and said, "No, we're waiting for some friends. We're gonna go down to the movies." He's like, "You're all covered with mud. You know, where'd that come from?" And I was like, "We had a little picnic up at my, in the back of my mom and dad's place. They had a lot of land at the time." So the cop's not buying it. And then he pulls me to one side and says, "Where's your brother?" I said, "I had no idea." And I honestly didn't. So he proceeds to like give me the third degree about my brother, but he won't tell me what it's about. And then finally I'm like, "Look, I don't know where my brother is. My buddy's here. We're going to the movies. Like, all four of you are going to go in a Toyota, and then the other guy's in the truck." And I'm like, "That's what we're doing." He's like, "Well, your brother's in big trouble. He tried to buy liquor with a fake ID. Cops showed up. He assaulted a cop. He wrecked the liquor store and took off on foot. And we think you're looking for him." About that point, more police cars show up. So I'm like, "I don't know I don't know what you're saying. I don't know. My brother's 15 years old. And he's a straight A student. He's a great athlete. That's not his style. I don't know what you're talking about. We're going to the movies. Have a nice night." So we leave, and we got like 3 police cars following us. So we end up driving like 20 miles out of our way before the cops were so far out of their jurisdiction they had to like cut and run. So we finally lose the cops. We go back in the woods. Surprisingly, there's no lights on in the house. The guy went out for the night and he wasn't back yet. So we ripped the truck out of the mud. At that point, we're probably pushing around midnight. Get the truck out. We go to a car wash to wash the trucks off. And we pull in, and apparently from us doing that and leaving clods of mud all over the place, the car wash owner decided no trucks were allowed. Which is fine, except he never put the sign up to say no muddy four-wheel drive trucks. So we don't put our change in. Next thing you know, police show up. And they're saying that we're trespassing and vandalizing, and we're like, "No, we're washing cars at the car wash. This is..." And then finally he's like, "Well, the owner doesn't like you guys making, a big muddy mess because he has to come and clean up." It's like, "Well, that's fine. All I had to do was put up a sign and we wouldn't come here. We'd drive through a river or something." So kind of going back and forth with the cop. Now it's around like 1 o'clock in the morning. And the cop asked me for ID, and then he pulls me one side. And he starts, going round and round, and "We know what you're doing, we know where you were, we know what you're up to." And I'm like, "I don't know what the hell you're talking about." So it's probably about 2 o'clock in the morning. He finally says, "We know you're out looking for your brother who tried to buy liquor and assaulted an officer and wrecked a liquor store and took off on foot." And again, I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." So, drop off my girlfriend. It's been a hell of a night. And now, we leave the car wash with our half muddy, half soapy trucks. We went someplace, finished off our beers, dropped off the girlfriends, finally get home. It's about 4 o'clock in the morning. My mother's sitting up. And I'm like, "Hey, Mom, what's up?" And she's just like, "Oh, did you hear about your brother?" And I said, "No, the police keep following me around all night and stalking me, but I have no idea." Well, it turns out my brother went in with a fake ID with his name on it and his correct address, tried to buy a liquor. Apparently it was the worst ID in the world. Kid behind the counter went and called the police. The police showed up. Cop holds the driver's license, the fake ID in front of him, kind of like taunting my brother. He says, "So, you think you're 21, huh?" And my brother, being one of the best athletes in the school, said, "Yes, I do." Grabbed the thing out of his hand and boogied for the door. And, I mean, he had a football scholarship. He had a lacrosse scholarship. He was an awesome athlete. So anyway, he dodges through the store like a rabbit. The police officer's not that good. He ends up running and smashing everything, which showed on surveillance footage later, and blamed it on my brother. As he's hitting the door, the first cop's yelling. Another cop's in the doorway and wraps my brother over the head with a flashlight, almost knocks him cold. His shoes fall off. He blows past the cops that have his girlfriend and whoever drove him handcuffed against the cars. And on another night he goes. So instead of the cops trying to pick up his trail, they followed me around all night, trying to figure out where the hell I was going. Meanwhile, I'm thinking that I'm in big trouble because that guy finally, his tank trap finally worked, and he's got me in my truck, and I'm in trouble for that. And then the police realized that they basically creamed a 15-year-old, and assaulting a minor wasn't justifiable ever. So they racked up all sorts of charges against my brother. My dad being a lawyer, he racked up, even more charges against the police. Then the police racked up some more charges against my brother. Then my father went after the township, the commissioner. I mean, he went after everybody. And everybody's just waiting for that court date. And although I didn't get along with most cops, there were cops that I was on pretty good terms with. So I found a cop that I knew that I could trust and said, hey, listen, this is all bullshit. My brother fucked up. The cop fucked up. Nobody's right on this one. If somebody reaches out on the courthouse steps, this whole thing's going to go away, which is what they did. And so it was a happy ending. But anyway, that was the funny story with the that I mentioned. A shout out to Poison Stinger. There's a lot of good content, a lot of great chats, a lot of good people there. And y'all have a good night.